The year-end information for the capital activities. So this sector of business performed at a surplus of $24 million, which was $5.7 million over budget. Most of that came from the recording of developer fees. Over $9 million was recorded in developer fees, and I just want to remind you that developer fees are recorded but not necessarily collected at this point. We have 15 years to try to collect those dollars, so there's some significant revenues here that don't reflect necessarily in cash activities. And then capital grants were off by about $5.7 million. And that's just timing, right? That's a cost reimbursement grant, so sometimes those funds take a little while to come in. Next slide. So these are our, this is a 3-year comparison. I apologize, I didn't print my notes, and I'm getting older, so I'm having a hard time reading some of these things sometimes. So this is our fiscal year comparison of consolidated revenue, and you can see that year over year, the significant increases were in miscellaneous revenue, and that is again related to mostly those developer fees that we recorded this year. HAP revenue related to the draws of the MTW HUD-held funds that we made, and then the other two items are grants and tenant revenue, and there was some small increase in both of those. The grants were related to the HAP administrative fees that we collect and public housing operating subsidy received. Both of those got an increase in proration from HUD. So next slide. This shows the same 3-year comparison for expenses. And there you could see how salaries have gone up, so the hiring appears to have improved, and I'm sure that Ayana is going to do a report for you. I think she's still doing those quarterly. So that appears to have improved. The HAP expense has also gone up, and that's really inflationary. Our lease up has gone up a little bit, but most of that's just inflationary. Other expenses and utilities have gone up slightly, but the most concerning thing here is ordinary maintenance and operations. Maintenance has continued to increase year over year. We have over 30% increase in costs from 21 to 22, and another 30% from 22 to 23. So it's really something we need to be watching for and closely tracking. So next slide. So this shows our debt to equity ratio, and based on the fact that we did pay off those significant loans with the Beacon portfolio, this has obviously improved. So we are down to 0.39. The goal is to stay below 1, and I think obviously with a 0.39 we're going to be well below 1 for a while, unless we pick up some significant debt somewhere else. And I'm not hoping in this environment to pick up any debt anytime soon. So next slide. So this is our current ratio, and a current ratio also improved basically for the same reasons, right? We're not paying debt service on those loans, so current assets have improved over time, and we are now at 2.57, and anything over 2 is considered very good, so hopefully we can sustain that ratio. Next slide. And so these are the uses these are the items that we pulled from the Moving to Work HUD-held funds this year. I think that it was important for 2 reasons. I mean, we've supported a lot of different projects here, but we also reduced the amount of funds that HUD was holding for us. So the largest uses were public housing operating shortfall, and then the 5.7 was paid off the maturing debt at the Woodhill property, and then we used $13 million to pay off loans at 9 of the other Beacon properties so they could sustain their affordability. So that total we drew down was $37 million this year. And then I have included 2 cash reports because we were unable to complete the March cash report when we did the March financial report for you guys. So we've included both March and June, and both of them have decreases, small decreases, but they're really related to capital projects that we were holding funds for. Some of the refinances in the past were we were still holding those modernization funds, and so we've expended those funds, and not completely, but we've expended some of those funds. So part of the decrease was related to that, and the other part of the decrease is related to, again, some of the struggles that the Beacon portfolio is having reimbursing for their operating costs. So our central bank is sort of holding on to some of those receivables, so it's taking a little while longer. The last thing I want to address is what I guess everyone is thinking about is the potential government shutdown. And I just want you all to know that we have been planning for it for, 15 years. We update our plan on a regular basis. We do have a fairly strong cash position, so we feel that we could sustain operations for a few months, even without HUD providing necessarily immediate funding. But there are 2 programs that the way HUD funds you. Public housing, they use an online system called LOCKS, and the September funding is already sitting in LOCKS. So we're confident that's electronic, so whether anybody's working at HUD or not, we'll be able to draw those funds down. HAP for Section 8 works differently. It is not something we can electronically draw, but there's a system that the FMD, our Financial Management Division, uses, and our financial analyst, who is a long-term employee, has assured us that because September and October have been officially obligated to us, even though we haven't gotten a distribution notice, is that even if she's there, or whether she's there or not, we should get our September and our October distributions from HUD for Section 8 as well. So we're pretty confident that we have enough cash to sustain at least that far. And yes, ma'am.
Have we ever had a position, has it ever happened where they didn't come through and we had to have a backup plan? And if so, do we have a backup plan?
So the backup plan is the available cash we have. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We have available cash from operations.
Yeah.
If it gets worse, we have the real estate services funds that we
Okay.
have available to us. And if it gets beyond that, then we have to make sort of a tough decision, because we do have funds that we're holding that are restricted by HUD. And I guess at that point, we'd have to make that decision whether to use those funds as well.
Upon if an eventual shutdown takes place, how quickly does HUD, do they, I guess, get back to work, so to speak? How quickly can they replenish us in the event that we have to break into?
Oh, I would imagine that would be pretty immediate.
It's pretty immediate.
Again, the capital fund as well is on that electronic system, LOCKS.
So we know that
So
we'll
those
have it.
typically don't, right, unless you're running into problems where you're bumping up against a budget threshold, which we don't have because we're MTW. We're not really anticipating any problems with public housing or cap fund.
Okay.
Fingers crossed. Is there anything else?
No.
Madam Committee Chair and Board Chair, I just wanted to let you all know that the stream on YouTube is up and running.
Okay.
Oh, and I apologize. I did want to introduce Decia Muniz. She is our analyst. She helps prepare the reports with Aaron Sladek, our assistant director. I just wanted to introduce her. Thanks.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the update and discussion regarding the quarterly internal audit report. Alice Lynch, Legal Director of Internal Audit, presenting.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. So this overview is going to be how internal audit ended the fiscal year 2022-2023. So for 2022-2023, internal audit reviewed a total of 28 escrows for the FSS, the Family Self-Sufficiency Program. So the total was $266,628 for an average escrow of $9,522. Next slide. We also completed the internal audit of the assisted housing waitlist eligibility and admissions process. That final report was issued to the board on August 3rd. There were 6 findings and 2 observations. 4 of the findings and 1 of the observation is on the corrective action item list that you all were provided. The other 2 findings were completed, and the other 1 observation was also completed, so they're not on the list. Next slide. We also kicked off the audit of the public housing repayment agreement on March 29th. We had an exceptions meeting held on July 26th to review the findings and observations with the public housing director, as well as the director of operations support. The draft report was developed, and an exit conference for this audit is scheduled for Monday, August the 28th. Next slide. We kicked off the audit of the public housing waitlist eligibility and admissions process in April. Field work is currently underway. There's going to be a sample size review of a maximum of 45 accounts of new admitted files and 10 denied applications. The audit will also contain a review for equity, diversity, and inclusion, and we will be working with policy and planning and the director of EDI for our findings on that. For the compliance audits, assistant housing, all files were digital. There were some physical files that were reviewed for permanent documentation. Assistant housing, we completed a total of 780 files reviewed for the fiscal year. 530 were digital, 250 were physical. For public housing, we reviewed 52 public housing and mixed income communities for a total of 618 files reviewed. And then for Beacon, we completed 29 of the Beacon community properties for a total of 484 files reviewed. And then finally, we have the corrective action items. You are all presented a list of those. There are currently 7 open action items. 2 of them are pending review and approval of an SOP, and those are expected to be completed this fiscal year. 4 of them are pending retraining of staff, and that's expected to be completed by September 30th. And then 1 is pending the creation of verification consent form to attach to the declaration of Section 214, which is the immigration status, and that's expected to be completed by September 30th. And that's about it. Any questions?
On the, especially in public housing, when someone moves out and the turnaround to get it ready for a new tenant to go off the waiting list, what is the normal time for that? I know Brandy's not here, but does anybody?
Joelle. That's a Joelle question.
What's turnaround time from the time somebody moves out till somebody moves in a public housing unit? Yeah.
Okay, it's 21 days.
21 days. Because sometimes I notice that some units sometimes sit vacant for a while. And I kind of wonder sometimes why that is, because, I mean, there's people waiting on the waiting list and we have units sitting that are ready. And or is it because people don't accept their offers, or?
Yeah, regrettably, there's a number of different reasons. The most common is they get put on maintenance hold. So while over the last year we were understaffed with our maintenance technicians and we had fewer contractors than we do today, a lot of them were sitting vacant because we didn't have the manpower resources to get them turned over as quickly as we wanted to. That's still happening today in not as high a rate as it was previously. We do have more contractors and more staff on board now, and we are catching up to complete the units that had been sitting stagnant for a while. We've been working with our HUD field office on strategies to fill our units as quickly as possible. So right now we're kind of in the catch-up phase from where we were at from last year. There are other reasons, like you mentioned, folks rejecting unit offers, transfers, because we're trying to match families to units that fit that are of the appropriate size for the family, and a lot of times they may pick a property that doesn't have an abundance of those unit sizes, and so it's a game, a puzzle of trying to fit families to the appropriate units at the appropriate communities. But when you see vacant units, when one is vacant, if, for instance, it gets vandalized, which we've been seeing a lot more of now with the rise of homelessness and crime in our communities, we've been seeing a lot of units that are, even if they do get made ready before the family moves in, they may get vandalized and the appliance is stolen, or if the water heater is stolen and it floods the unit. And so there are many number of reasons, is what I'm saying. But for by and large, it has to do with maintenance and make-ready issues.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. And there being no further items, we can adjourn. First, I would like to take a moment of personal privilege and thank my colleagues for working with me this past year. Today's my last official board meeting, and I also would like to thank the staff. You all are awesome and do a lot of work and do some fantastic work and give a lot to your community. And of course, our licenciado, I'll miss him. And I hope that everything goes even better after this, even though I won't be here. And I thank you all for all your time and for your kindness. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you for your leadership, your friendship, and I learned a lot from you. And, on our travels and when we would have meals and stuff, and I learned a lot from you, and I thank you for that, and you will be missed.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think I'll miss you most of all.
Thank you.
I also would like to give a shout out and thank you to Mayor Nierenberg for giving me the privilege of working on this board. Thank you.
Go into operations. Okay, we can go right into the operations. We don't have to do a new roll call, correct? Okay. Okay. The Board of Commissioners or its committee may hold a closed meeting pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.071-076 for consultation concerning attorney-client matters, real estate, litigation, personnel, and security matters. The Board or committee reserves the right to enter into closed meeting at any time during the course of the meeting. I understand there are no citizens to be heard, so we'll go into the individual items. Number 3, consideration and appropriate action regarding Resolution 6366, authorizing the award of contracts for temporary and contract personnel services to Labor on Demand, LK Jordan and Associates, TriStar Personnel, there's a list of them, 22nd Century Technologies, for an annual cumulative amount not to exceed $2 million. Ayana's first.
Yes, thank you, Commissioners. We are here today to request approval for this temporary staffing contract. As you know, we do use a lot of staffing agencies to provide temporarily trained staff and skilled workers for our vacant positions. And these are short-term fills that we use in order to either allow us time to post the position and go through a full recruitment process, or as some of our departments have utilized, to try out employees in a temporary capacity to see if they're catching on to the material material, following the training and up to speed, and they'll transition into full-time staff and fill the vacancy. So we do utilize temps in those two capacities. We also have temps that are project temps, and so these are for special projects that we have that may come up during the course of the year, and these are definitely temporary assignments, and the temps that come into them are recruited specifically understanding it is for a short-term time period. And just for context as well to this contract, in order to meet our staffing needs, this year we have 690 budgeted full-time positions. In our last year, for the end of fiscal year 22-23, we did process 278 temps. So again, we do have high volume with our temporary staffing companies, and 101 of those 278 transitioned into full-time employees. So again, just reaffirming the need for us to have these contracts in place. And so I will turn it over to George, who will talk about the procurement process.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. So regarding the solicitation process, on June 15, Opportunity Home issued a request for proposals for temporary and contract personnel, which closed on July 5th of this year. The RFP was published on multiple websites, directly solicited to 494 vendors, and at the conclusion, we received 16 responses, which were evaluated on experience, capacity, quality plan and approach, response time, price proposal, and the strength of the Section 3 and SWIMBY plans. At this point, staff is recommending the award to the four highest responsive and responsible proposers, which is Labor on Demand, LK Jordan, TriStar Personnel, and Centuries Technologies. As far as the financial impact, the current award recommendation for temporary contract personnel services is not expected to exceed an annual cumulative amount of $2 million. This award includes temporary trained and skilled workers to fill vacant positions and short-term basis to meet short-term personnel needs and special projects. Any questions? In addition, we would like to just to notify you that we are proposing to move forward with the four highest ranking vendors. However, we are asking for we might bring some additional vendors on board just to have more of an applicant pool. So we are thinking of in the future bringing up another solicitation that will allow us to bring on more local vendors to meet our needs as well.
Okay. Any questions on this one? With none, I'll entertain a motion so that way we can move it to the board meeting for approval.
I motion we move item 3 to the board meeting for approval.
Second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Good, thank you. Item number 4, consideration and appropriate action regarding Resolution 6377, approving Opportunity Home San Antonio to provide financial support to Snowden Apartments by authorizing the San Antonio Housing Facility Corporation in its capacity as a sole member of the general partner of Snowden Apartments. One, to ratify and increase the existing moving to work loan from our Opportunity Home from $8.5 to $9.785 million, borrow $2 million from Las Vegas Public Facility Corporation to bridge anticipated proceeds for the sale. Lorraine Robles.
Good afternoon. What's on the screen right now is our development schedule, and just wanted to show you that we've updated it and moved any prior or previously approved project into construction. Also, our Vista at Reed has also moved up in the ranks, and we'll be bringing it back to you at another board meeting for its final approval. But this particular item is regarding Snowden. This is our first self-development project, and it's located in the medical center, just one block north of the Babcock-Wurzbach intersection, and it's a senior development, as you may recall. Next slide. This slide has, just to refresh your memory, it's in District 7, serviced by Northside ISD, 135 units for individuals that are 62 years of age and older. Approximately 68 units of the 135 will serve residents at 30% of AMI or below. And of those, 54 of those units are actually subsidized units. And we have a total development cost of $33.8 million. Now, we're coming to you today with seeking authority for two requests, as you mentioned. The first one is to increase our MTW loan. Your original approval was for $8.5 million. However, by the time we got to closing, if you recall last summer, interest rates started to increase dramatically. And so by the time we closed in October, we had a larger gap. Approximately 1.2 it had increased by. So we're asking, and we had to commit at that time in order to get to closing. So now we're coming back to you to let you know we need to increase our MTW loan by the 1.2 million in order to meet our obligations. The second request is with regard to a bridge loan. Now, knowing that we had already put in so much money into this project, we sought additional funding through both the City of San Antonio housing bonds as well as the Texas Department of Community Affairs state tax credits. We were eligible for supplemental credits. We didn't get the housing bonds, but we did get the supplemental credits, and they will yield approximately $2,080,000. The only problem is they won't come until the end of the project. And so in order for us to make sure that we have sufficient funding to complete the project without any kinds of delays, we're asking or requesting that you allow for us to have Las Vadas Public Facility Corporation provide a bridge loan, a $2 million bridge loan to the project, so that as we move through the project, if funding becomes an issue, we know we have those funds available, that bridge loan available. At the end of the project, when the funds are paid by our tax credit provider, then they'll go back to either repaying that bridge loan or repaying the MTW loan, just depending if we ever had to use them or not. So that's extra money that's coming into the project. The next slide that you have on the screen is showing you our progress. We're approximately 16.33% complete. We've poured foundations for buildings 3 and 2 and most of building 1. So we're almost poured out. We should begin framing next month, so that's exciting for us. Once we start framing, then you'll see that it'll start going more quickly. Again, our request today is to ensure that we've got the proceeds that we need, the funding that we need to keep the project moving in a timely manner. Any questions?
I just have a question on when we borrow from Las Vadas Facility Corporation, what budget line is that coming from? Like, do we have a fund that covers this type of stuff and it's not going to cause any risk?
So those are part of the real estate funds, and they are available, and they are cash in the bank, and they're unrestricted.
Okay.
Yes.
It doesn't put anything else that we were anticipating to use at risk.
Depending on the shutdown, right? Yes, that would be
That's the
our
one thing.
that would be our third level though of
Okay.
funding, right?
Okay.
After other available fundings. Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
And yes, this is going to be a tricky piece of if there's a shutdown, is going to be the construction needs. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
But these funds will be sufficient enough to carry it through, provided
Definitely.
we go through.
And
with it.
again, it's
Okay.
only in the case that we need it.
Right. And then, and 2 million of that gets paid back anyways
And
by through the tax credit?
$2,080,000,
Upon completion.
right, at completion. Uh-huh.
Okay. Any other questions? With none, I'll entertain a motion to move this to the board meeting.
So move.
Well, first, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
ma'am. Oh, let's see if somebody else. Oh, Tim. Consideration appropriate action regarding Resolution 6378 and 23 FAC-08-03, authorizing the deposition of 202 Garcia Street, including the execution of all documentation necessary to carry out this deposition, authorizing the purchase of land from the Housing Authority, City of San Antonio, by San Antonio Housing Facility Corporation, and the lease of such land for the transaction.
Good
Oh, hey.
afternoon. I'm not Tim,
You're
nor
not Tim.
Lorraine, but I'm Susan Ramos-Sossman. I'm the Assistant Director for Development Services and Neighborhood Revitalization. Today, we are seeking approval for the disposition of the land on 202 Garcia and the adjacent parcels. These first two slides show where it's located, which is on the east side, nearby the Springview community. To date, we've outreached and received support from residents, the community, and the mayor. Once we receive environmental review approval, we will complete an application for HUD for disposition, which will then move these properties into facility core. We are hoping to develop a Montessori-like preschool on that property for extremely low-income families with children ages 3 to 5. And we're going to do this with a community partner. So please know that this is the first step. We're seeking approval for the disposition. In the future, we're going to come back and ask for approval for the final project. And these are the slides. I'm speaking fast, but these are the slides of what's the proposed for the school. That's the outdoor space. And so we're working with our partner to develop a high-quality facility for our children. So like I was saying, we'll come back for approval for the final approval for the general contractor, for development cost, and to introduce our partner. So like I mentioned, today is only for the disposition.
Any questions?
What are we doing? Disposition could mean lease, could be sell. Are we selling the land?
No, we're going to keep it.
Okay, so we're leasing it?
So we dispose of it because it's currently a public housing property, so it needs to move into one of our other entities.
Okay.
And so it'll be owned by one of our nonprofit entities, and we're doing the construction, and then we'll, with our partner, they'll be able to occupy it.
So the disposition moves it from housing to,
It gives us that
That's
flexibility.
correct.
gives us a flexibility to do something different
That's
with
correct.
it. And that's the only thing we're voting on today.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
Okay. And then I saw the language and it was very vague on who the partner is and some of the other pieces. Is that because we're still exploring partners?
Actually, we do have approval now to name our partner, and it's going to be Bezos.
Okay.
And so they will be available in the future to answer questions.
Great. Awesome.
No further questions? I'll entertain a motion.
I motion that we move item number 5 to approval for the board meeting.
Okay.
I second.
First and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Item number 6, consideration and appropriate action regarding Resolution 6380 and 23 LVPFC-08-16, authorizing Los Hatos Public Facility Corporation approval of an inducement resolution for proposed tax credits and tax-exempt multifamily housing revenue bonds for a multifamily residential rental development for persons of low and moderate income, known as Union Park Apartments. Let's just go to Miranda. Is that who will be delivering this one? Miranda Castro, you're up. Oh, no, it's okay.
Y'all get no breaks.
Sorry, I was so prepared. I have like notes and everything. I just was not listening, and that is 100% my fault. I apologize. So let's pretend that didn't happen. So Union Park and Pines, thank you for the opportunity to present this. So, excuse me. So we are looking at issuing some bonds for these two properties. These are existing projects that we are looking to preserve affordability in. So they are projects that were initially developed in the late 60s, early 70s. There was a renovation that took place in about 20 years ago, and so they're looking to acquire these properties, renovate them. We are not going to be in the deal, so this is strictly just pass-through income, pass-through that we would be having funds that we were getting. We'll get 1% of the deal. So it's for two projects. The first one is, it's a 100-unit project, so it's Union Park. There's 85 of those units are 30% AMI, so that's really wonderful in that we'll be able to preserve the really deep affordability within the neighborhood. It is a family project. They are looking for a $22 million bond. Of that, they are going to be doing an acquisition and renovation of the existing structures. It will continue to stay with
all of the units will be below 60% AMI, with, again, 85% of the building is going to be at 30% AMI. Next slide, please. So you could probably, you want to go to the, yeah, so, and then this is Union Park, so those are the photographs, and then Union Pine, can you go to Union Pines, Devlin? Yeah, so I'm sorry.
Well,
Doing this wrong.
given that they're both conduit financing deals, why don't you go ahead and go into Union Pine as well,
Okay,
and then we
sure.
can, we can
Yeah.
motion both of them to.
I apologize.
No, it's okay, that works.
Okay, so Union Pines, very similar situation with this building. So this is 152 units total. Excuse me. All of the units are going to be under 60% AMI. Again, there is a large affordability in this building. 118 of those units, which is 77% of the project, is going to be under 30% AMI. Again, it's a family building, 1 to 3 bedrooms. There is a total ask of $30 million in bonds. Of that, $7 million will be for renovation costs, and this is an acquisition and renovation of an existing project. I'm very excited to work with Omni Group. They are a new group within the area. They have a presence in Texas, but not in San Antonio, and I'm excited to bring them on board. They're extremely responsive for anything that we've had a request for, and I'm really glad to start build a partnership with them for sure.
Good, and just for clarification, this one, we're just doing the bond, so we collect the fee and move on.
Correct, and there's no liability. They have not asked us to be a general partner in the deal. This is simply just us issuing bonds on these two projects. So 22 million and 30 million, and so we'll get 1% of that amount of money with no liability, so I believe it's a really good opportunity for us.
I'll entertain a motion if there's no other questions. And it would be for items 6 and 7.
I so move.
Okay.
I second.
We have a first, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
No opposed? Motion carries. We'll see you at the board
Thank
meeting.
you. I appreciate your time.
Just to clarify, that's for both items,
Correct, that's for items 6 and 7. Okay, we'll move on to item number 8. Consideration and appropriate action regarding Resolution 6382, establishing the support of submitting the Solar for All grant application as part of the Texas Solar for All Consortium. Tim Alcott?
And Jason Pittman, the young,
And Jason
good-looking
Pittman.
guy.
All right, great.
But Jason is the president of Big Sun Community Solar, and they have a partnership with CPS, was how we got to get to know them. They helped us with the Mira Vista project many years ago and helped to bring us the community center net zero. And so we were very successful with that. He told me about this grant that was coming out, and the grant was put out by the Environmental Protection Agency. It was a $7 billion grant. These are numbers that we're not used to seeing around here. $7 billion. And what they wanted to do was have, not administer millions and millions of grants, for small amounts. So they asked you to get in consortiums with other groups. And with Jason and his contacts and other groups that reached out to us, we are doing a collaborative grant with the largest cities in San Antonio, but we're the only housing authority in the group. And quite frankly, we're a good partner because we have a success story. And what we hope to do is model this, and if we're successful in getting this grant, we'd love to bring all of our public housing units to net zero. And so we're going to be asking for around $66 million, for that. But he's been working with our EPC consultant out of Denver and making sure that we don't have conflicts there and that we're able to do this. And so we're still doing, the due diligence on this and to make sure that we can do this. And but what we're asking for today is a formalized what we're doing, but they asked for all the government entities to respond to get a letter of support from their board that that you're okay with us going for this grant. And so that's what we're asking for today. But we have a quick slideshow, and you want to take the lead on the slideshow?
Sure. Here's the quick agenda for The handful of slides that we have today will talk about the program, who those potential partners are. It's the largest metro areas in Texas. I think you mentioned San Antonio, but it's actually across the state. We also have some local stakeholders, and then we'll just quickly go over what the next steps are. So next slide, please. Here's an example of what we're proposing to build here in San Antonio with Opportunity Home. So basketball courts across your developments, can we cover them and activate them for summer use so the kids can have some shade? And then on the left there, that's a typical ground mount project. So this is similar to what we're doing for Mira Vista through the existing CPS Energy contract, where the panels that are supplying energy to that property are actually off-site, and we send a virtual credit to the CPS Energy accounts at Mira Vista. And so we're proposing more of that. This is a little bit of information about the grant opportunity. It was established through the Inflation Reduction Act. It's called the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, and the priority of this grant is to bring the benefits of solar energy to low-income communities and households. Typically, they've been left out over the years, even through some of the most generous rebate programs. They typically have a high upfront cost, and so this grant is 100% targeting low-income communities and low-income households. There on the left is just a quick kind of schedule. The lead applicant for this coalition is Harris County in Houston. They submitted their letter of intent on Monday, so that's the August the 14th. The full application is due September the 26th. And so our role is to provide a program narrative and a program budget to Harris County that they can include in the application. Tim mentioned it's $7 billion. The Texas Solar for All Coalition is requesting $400 million of that. Slide, please. Opportunity Home San Antonio, their request is almost $75 million. As a nonprofit, Opportunity Home is now eligible for what they call a direct pay. It's an investment tax credit. Over the last decade, it's only been available to organizations that have an income tax appetite, but the Inflation Reduction Act actually opened it up to nonprofits. And so the idea is that we can pursue an additional $38 million through that direct pay investment tax credit program. So that's the 30 to 50% that you see there. Again, it's solar equity focused. It aligns perfectly with CPS Energy and the recent programs that they've announced. Tim mentioned Mira Vista. Really, the narrative of this program is Opportunity Home has already done this for one property as a pilot. We've proven that it works, and we want to scale it to the rest of the public housing properties. Next slide, please. Here are the three types of programs that we're proposing, how to get to net zero energy. As you can imagine, you have different types of properties, and they all have their own challenges. The first one is, this is on-site solar, where we can install the solar generating asset behind the consumption meter, and so it directly offsets the energy that you're using from CPS Energy. That's typically what you see around town whenever you see rooftop solar, even residential or commercial systems. An example of type A would be the Alazon expansion project that you're working on. It has solar on the roof. It directly lowers the energy consumption. The second one is on-site solar. However, you don't have a master meter. Every unit has its own individual meter, which makes it more difficult. And so the solar is still located on-site, but it's actually interconnected directly to CPS's distribution grid. And then a virtual credit would be sent to the different units at that property. And then the third is off-site solar, and so this is the existing program that we're using for Mira Vista. The solar panels are not on-site, they're off-site somewhere else. They're either in a field, or maybe we're covering a parking lot. We've found a partner that's hosting the solar panels. They're connected directly to CPS's distribution grid, and we send a virtual credit to any CPS Energy account that we want to. So for Mira Vista, their panels are actually sitting at the GMC car dealership off 1604, and all of the energy coming from those panels is offsetting the CPS Energy bill for the house meters at the Mira Vista program. And so we're asking to scale that with CPS. Here are the coalition members over on the right. I mentioned earlier, Harris County is the lead applicant, so they're submitting the grant application to the EPA. And then the non-lead coalition members are Dallas County, Travis County, Austin Energy is participating up in Austin. The city of San Antonio is also submitting some projects as a non-lead applicant, and then Opportunity Home. And then the Texas Energy Poverty Research Institute is coordinating submitting the application to the EPA, so they're taking the lead on writing it. Local partners, again, we mentioned it a couple of times, we're just trying to scale the existing CPS Energy program. We want to try to leverage as many small, kind of minority-owned business enterprises as we can, and also partner with local community organizations in terms of workforce development. An example of that is St. Philip's College through the Alamo District. They have a generation and alternative energy certification program, and so we would try to hire as many of those graduates as we can. Next steps, we've submitted a letter of support to CPS Energy. We're waiting for them to review and to respond. We're still developing the program concept in collaboration with the City of San Antonio, where Opportunity Homes is requesting close to $70 million. The City of San Antonio is requesting $25 million. And then we need to assist Harris County in actually writing the program narrative and submitting the application. Kind of the path forward with CPS, again, we've submitted the letter of support. They're reviewing it. They are also releasing a request for proposal at the end of this month, where they're asking for concepts and ideas on how to bring solar to low-income households. And so we can also respond to that and become an official partner of theirs if we feel like that is the best step, the best next step. And the idea, this is something that Tim has talked with me about and the rest of his team, is can we bring Opportunity Home San Antonio to become the first public housing entity in the U.S. to be net zero energy across all their public housing properties. That's the last slide.
Perfect opportunity because of the amount of funds. What we're asking for today is simply your approval to apply for and go for the grant, and we'd have a resolution after, of course, the full board meeting.
Right.
Some of the other entities have already brought it to their boards, but we'll be one of several, and it's very nice of Harris County being willing to take the lead on this. But Jason's been real helpful because he's been getting the loadage of all of our properties, and so mapping out how we would actually we have enough energy in the solar panels to be able to actually do this. So it's great to have Jason as part of the team.
So Tim, at this point, in order to submit the grant application, we would need support from the board, is that correct?
That's absolutely correct.
And if we submit an application and later decide that we don't want to go forward with all of it or any of it?
And we could shift, if there's a problem with something, we could shift to our Beacon portfolio or do something different as opposed to public housing if there was a challenge. I'm not saying there would be, but we'd apply for the grant, but my belief is that it will work for public housing. And public housing is, they get, it's beyond perhaps this conversation right now, but they get utility allowances, and it can make it more complicated. And also we have an EPC contract, but we're working through that. And from talking to our consultants, they believe that it would allow that. So I know we're going to have more conversations about that, and we're just asking for approval for the apply for the grant. If we took it or not, you could later say, what, it didn't work out, or what have you.
I do want to thank you for moving forward with this and letting us take the lead in the nation to be one of the first housing authorities to go net zero. I know it'll help us as an organization and our utility line item, and also to help our residents pay less in utility bills, which puts more money in their pockets. Thank you, and I totally support this project.
I just have comments in terms of thinking about what the grant details will include. You don't need to answer, but just would hope that a grant that we submit helps us think forward-facing, like once solar panels are in place, what is the sustainability plan for maintenance, disposal, removal? I know there are a lot of issues with disposal and the recyclability of solar power, solar panels. The other piece is I really appreciate you saying the analysis, like will they be able to truly get us to net zero and fully power without issues of blackouts for families and especially, our residents that are, that's right. So just making sure that we're really judicious about that study so that residents don't end up thinking they're getting something good and then it's harmful to their life quality. Those are just a couple of pieces that I would hope that we are building in so that we don't get distracted by like, this looks really good up front. We didn't have a strong plan beyond the initial $7 to $5 million investment, and now it's actually costing more to deal with it, and then there's an energy impact. Super excited about it, and just want to make sure we're, critical lovers of our own work. Yeah.
Not so much a question, but more.
We have responses, but we'll talk later.
When we get to that point, yeah.
Absolutely. Great. Yeah.
No other questions? I'll take a motion to push this to the board meeting.
I move that we
Approve item
push
number
it
8.
to, yeah,
Okay.
number 8.
A second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We're good. Okay. Item number 9. I'll read it. Consideration appropriate action regarding the housing authorities of the City of San Antonio, Texas bylaws and rules of governance. Doug, you can go ahead and say it. I mean,
So do you wish to take that you can take this into a closed session if you want.
I'd say no. At this point, commissioners have received copies of them.
Okay.
Review them. We'll bring this up. It'll come up again next month, and then we'll make the decisions on them, and then hopefully try to get these approved at the following board meeting then.
They're very sort of dusty old rules that we've had for about 10 years, and some of the thought process at that time is stratified. I mean, it's calcified in the version you have. And so so I was pretty aggressive with a lot of suggested changes, just to say, well, if we're going to make changes, let's try to standardize terms and simplify things where we can. And so I encourage you obviously to take a look at those and decide what you want to keep. It's just my first stab at it, so if the board finds that there are other changes that you would like to see, and certainly these are your rules, and so you get to make that call. But my goal was to kind of make them read more contemporary to how we operate how you operate as a board and how we operate meetings and so forth.
Okay. Did y'all have any comments on it right now, since we have?
I haven't finished reading.
Okay. I looked through it. I've kind of made my notes through them, but just low hanging. We referred to an opportunity home. Shouldn't we refer to an opportunity home San Antonio, given that is our rules and governance?
We can do that, yes.
Yeah,
I think I'd probably oversimplified that, yeah.
Well, I was going to say, opportunity home San Antonio, then also known as opportunity home, and then that would go from there. But
in any case, and I can make that change, we're still going to have some reference to the fact that we're the housing authority for the city of San Antonio. That is our legal name for purposes of identifying ourselves as a housing authority under state law and so forth.
Okay.
But as you know, we had SAHA before, San Antonio Housing Authority, so you certainly can call yourself something else that is more user-friendly. But absolutely, I'll make that change.
I just had one clarifying question about voting, because this is simply just manner of voting, you still have to be present to vote.
Correct.
Okay.
No proxies.
Yeah, because it says in writing or by hand, so that kind of implies we vote like this, by vocally, so, okay.
Right.
no, because we're not making that big changes. I think
Some of the other processes that we experienced, that you experienced as a result of COVID, kind of confuses things. For example, the idea of streaming, the idea of providing folks who are remotely located the opportunity to give comments at time for citizens, the opportunity for board members to participate remotely. There's a law that's always been in place, for example, with regard to that allows some remote participation, but you still have to have a quorum here. It's a little less friendly than it was under COVID, and that was changed temporarily as a result of the governor issuing an emergency order saying we're going to do away with some of the typical requirements about attending in person, for example, during the COVID emergency. But that emergency order was repealed in September a year ago, I guess it was. And so we now revert back to what the Open Meetings Act said about remote attendance, and it's just know that that's still a possibility, although it's not as generous or flexible as it was during the emergency period. With regard to streaming and with regard to remote participation of time for citizens, so folks, some entities kept that process going. You're not required to do that. That was required as part of the emergency order, but it's not required for you. So I've made the assumption that we're going to do what you're doing now.
Right.
These rules are meant to be more of your local rules, the rules that you follow. So we'll reflect references to law, just to kind of give guidance to the commissioners of saying, okay, you have to do this because the state law says so. But this is sort of in that regard, this is kind of just like an organizing document, so you can have a handy reference to, like, well, what is the rule on that and how do we do that? It's not exhaustive. It's not meant to be exhaustive. It's meant to be user-friendly. So it's both local, sort of an easy reference for you, with some legal references built in that you cannot change. You have to follow those.
Right.
I've taken out stuff that talked about what the agenda structure would look like, because I kind of feel like that's unduly restrictive. You should have flexibility to adjust your agenda as needed. So I'm trying to strike a balance. You can see how there are different things that are going on with this document, so it's a little bit of a tricky thing to get right.
And for commissioners that will be here beyond, well, for all of us, it'll live beyond us. We're not changing main structures of policy. We're still following the law. We're simply cleaning up a document that hadn't been changed in one case.
2013.
2013 is the last time
I was much
touched.
younger than those days.
A little bit.
And I noticed that you didn't bring through all the sections. There were some sections you dropped.
Yeah, because I kind of felt like they were, again, I was trying to streamline it, and I didn't think it was necessary to carry everything forward.
Yeah, like expenses.
Right.
So.
Just as I was reading through it, I felt like it wasn't necessary to cite to statute every single time.
There.
Yeah.
That would
Yeah.
just be more in a
Right.
document that's given.
And on there, because without a stated ethics policy, it refers to, we follow the city of San Antonio's ethics policy. I assume that's the one that we follow.
Yeah, you're required to follow, all city officials or city appointed officials have to follow the city's ethics ordinance.
Okay.
You can make additional rules for yourself, though, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I do think that after a while, it may get a little confusing as to what rules you're supposed to follow.
Right, and my intent really was just to have this one cleaned up. If we want to change something, that's something that when the board becomes whole again, then if we so choose to do so, we can do so then, but right now, I don't think it's necessary. At this point, it's just to help clean up, streamline it, makes it easier for everybody to see and read. So.
One use of this thing as well is that there have been times in the history of this organization, this organization's had a long history of different approaches to board involvement, or sometimes dealing with a commissioner who maybe was going off the reservation with regard to acting independently and stuff like that. I'm happy to say that it's been years since we've had those kinds of issues. But some of the things that we have, like, for example, the hybrid posting of your committee agendas, that's a result of committee members, of additional board members wanting to attend committee meetings, or one in particular. Mm-hmm. And so, we would post for a committee, and then the person would show up and make it a 4-person thing. And there is this ambiguity about whether that's really now just a committee meeting. Some would say it is. I take the cautious approach of saying, we're going to call it a committee meeting, and if a quorum shows up, we're going to then say it's a special meeting so that there's no confusion. And then we've added, as you probably have seen in our postings, a footnote that makes it clear that these hybrid meetings are not for final action, even if the whole board were to show up. Because if one of you doesn't appear at one of these committee meetings, you don't want to be feeling like you have to worry about some final action taking place just because a quorum of the board showed up.
We're sort of already doing this now.
Yeah.
Now we're just codifying it.
Yeah.
So it's, when it,
Right.
I don't want it to come across as if when we get new board members next month, we're springing something different and new. It's the same
Right.
rules, we've just
Same rules.
simplified it to them. So with that, we don't need to vote on moving this to board meeting because we're not going to be approving it necessarily in October.
Yeah, you wanted to be placed on the agenda, right?
Yes, okay, yeah, so we do need to approve, so it goes onto the agenda.
Right, and then it can still be changed even at that meeting.
Okay.
Or it can be tinkered with and then approved at a future meeting.
Okay, and then for discussion, we can have it as a closed session item too.
Absolutely, and I would just say, because you will have new board members, one of the requirements of under law, but also under these rules, is that there will be training and orientation for new board members, and some of this discussion that we're having right now would be part of that training as well.
Mm-hmm.
So this discussion can become unwieldy, I will just caution you. So if you have feedback and you want to send it to me ahead of time, I can certainly kind of try to capture that, or at least make a note so that we make sure to cover it at the next meeting.
Ideally, what we see at the next meeting is the clean version.
Right.
So if you do get comments, get it to Doug ahead of time.
Please.
Okay, so I'll take a motion on item number 9 to move this to the next board meeting.
So moved.
Have a second? First and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll see it next month. Okay. President's report?
Thank you. We do have a few items to talk about. First of all, I want to thank Commissioner Kaufman, Commissioner Dantzler, Commissioner Perez, and Commissioner Dr. Guzman for their service for the last few years, and for the guidance and leadership that you provided for staff. We have been celebrating Muriel. Our Chief Administrative Officer was selected as a recipient of the San Antonio Business Journal Women's Leadership Award on January 20th. And we had a luncheon in her honor that we had with all of the other awardees as well, and that was on August 10th at the Norris Conference Center. So congratulations, Muriel.
Yay.
We have our Director of Resident Services, Joelle Tabar, was accepted as a class member of the 2023 Leadership Lyceum. This is with the San Antonio Apartment Association, and they are identifying knowledgeable and effective leaders in the multifamily housing industry who align with the association's mission and strategic vision. These are highly motivated industry professionals, and they're selected for their vision and strong commitment to enhancing the structure, programs, and future of SAAA. Congratulations, Joel. We have Dr. Janice Briggs, our Director of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, co-presented with YMCA Director of Racial Justice and Gender, Misty Hardy, at the Council for Large Public Housing Authorities in Washington, D.C. on May 12th. The breakout session was exploring the intersectionality of housing, race, and wage gaps and their impact on the most disenfranchised San Antonians. Congratulations, Janice. And we have Joanna Alvarado, our Director of IT, who attended the Google Cloud-generated Artificial Intelligence Live Plus Labs in Washington, D.C. in July, and she was able to learn about the uses of artificial intelligence in its capabilities from an organization standpoint. Congratulations, Joanna.
She here? She's right here.
And we have Tim Alcott, who will be departing from the organization after 17 years and of dedicated service. And he's been a champion for affordable housing. He transformed Opportunity Homes Development Services and Neighborhood Revitalization, Construction, and Legal Services Department during his tenure. So he has more than 20 years in affordable housing industry, both in public and private sectors. And we want to thank Tim for his impactful and remarkable service. And I have a few more things to read about some of the accomplishments he's had. As I said, he was an employee at Opportunity Home for 17 years, and I remember I was actually on the interview panel. So he started off as a chief operating officer, and he was heavily involved and oversaw a lawsuit against a home builder, and ultimately obtained the largest litigation award by a housing authority in the country of $20 million. He was promoted to legal and real estate officer, where he oversaw the choice grant of $29 million, and that was leveraged to put $150 million investment on the east side. We have 414 mixed income development units there, and he also opened the Dr. Robert Hillard Medical Clinic as part of that expansion and created an urban farm. He and his team also increased the number of new developments, and over a 10-year period, we saw a development project and cost over $1.2 billion and 7,000 units. Tim oversaw construction services and sustainability and asset management departments, and construction services recently oversaw the rehabilitation of Victoria Plaza, and that was a $20 million project. And then finally, Tim was named as the outstanding in-house lawyer. It's an award from the San Antonio Business Journal due to all of his many accomplishments. So please join me in thanking Tim for his contribution. And finally, we have some new news. Lorraine Robles is going to be leaving us as well in the near future. And, many of the things that I just read about with Tim, Lorraine collaborated on. She was very active in the choice redevelopment and a big part of that project. She was active in San Juan Homes redevelopment, Sutton Homes redevelopment, and we're sorry to see you go, Lorraine. Thank you for everything you've done.
Tim, I'd like to say thank you for your service to the organization. It's been a pleasure to work with you as a commissioner on this board. Development is a complicated thing, and being a resident of public housing and everything, it was like, wow. That's a lot to understand, and I want to thank you for taking your time when we would travel to conferences, and I had questions, and you would take your time to educate me, and it gave me a better view of my job and what I need to do with this organization to help lead it forward, and I really want to thank you for that. I wish you the best of luck in your new endeavor, and may you go with God's blessings. Lorraine, you're going to be missed too, and especially in our travels and stuff, but like I said about Tim, you were a great asset to this organization, and also in educating me in development and the work that you did, and I want to say thank you, and you will be missed.
At risk of being redundant, but it is a huge loss for the organization, and I certainly appreciate it. I've worked with both of you on two different times that I've served on this board, and it's a huge loss. And again, count on you guys personally as friends, but as colleagues, and honestly as our teachers. And it's a tough deal. It's actually probably the toughest work in front of Ed and the rest of the ELT to figure out your shoes are not easily filled, if at all. So you'll be missed, but I know congratulations are in order as well. So whomever finds you they are lucky for it. So
It's the shoes and the pumps. 'Cause it
so, well, anyways, great job for your
Thank
years of
you
service
all.
to us, both of you. Well, with that good news, can we go to closed session?
You absolutely can. The board will be entering into closed session to consult with its attorney under Section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code, and also to discuss personnel under 551.074 of the Texas Government Code regarding the president and CEO performance evaluation and contract. The time is 2:23.
Okay, we'll go to closed session. He's going to bring us back, and then we can. Yeah, you don't need to. Okay, I have a motion to close the meeting. Do I have a second?
I second to close the meeting.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Meeting adjourned. Yeah.